Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to Avon, WIIFY Right Now Radio. WIIFY, What's in It for You Right Now Radio is the premier Avon radio show that's all about helping you right now. Here to help, motivate, train, inspire, and empower you in your Avon business. So get ready to take your business to the next level. Now here's your host, Avon Independent Sales Rep, Southeast Regional Makeup Maven, and National Executive Unit Leader, Lisa Monison.
Well, good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. My gosh, it seems like it's been a couple weeks since we've had our show, and I'm excited to be back. I know we're all out there busy as Avon representatives with our Million Lips, Million Smiles event, so I'm sure you guys have been really busy. Thank you for taking the time out to listen in tonight. We've got a great show for you. We have Karen Whitney with us tonight. She's going to be going over great business tips for taxes. Now, I love to always give a little bit of a short intro on our guests, so I'm going to give you a little bit of Karen's background first. So Karen's story is a little bit different than most representatives. Even though her mom used to use some products, she said she never did, and she doesn't remember as Avon representative coming to their home back when she was a child. She said she didn't start her Avon business to make money. She was a bored housewife in a brand new home with no projects to work on, as she did in her other homes, and she didn't want to go back to work in the real world. But her husband was looking ahead at retirement. He wanted her to get a job to learn, a little extra money to take some of the financial pressure off of him for their mortgage. One late night, she said she woke up on the couch and an Avon info commercial was on. And many of you may remember that. That was with Susie Orman. And she watched it first, and she was just in disbelief that Avon, first of all, had an info commercial. And second, she just kept chanting to herself, I will not sell Avon, I will not sell Avon, I will not sell Avon. She said she had sold twice before without any luck, and she promised her husband that she would never sell it again. So one night at dinner, her husband brought up the job issue again, and she told him about the infomercial that she'd seen with Avon, and he said, well, go check it out. What can it hurt? So she did, and that was back in 2009, and she started her leadership business shortly after, but she lost two teams. The first one included her sister, who was her very first recruit, and she never achieved the title of unit leader. She decided at that time she was just going to concentrate on sales and forget about leadership. But then one day, a lady called her who wanted to start her Avon business, and Karen signed her up, and that was in Campaign 24 of 2011. She is currently a unit leader with a team of 14. Karen is also the founder of Karen's Cafe, which is formerly Avon Cafe on Facebook, and has approximately 2,500 Avon representatives from all over the world in the group. So we have this lovely Karen Whitney on with us tonight that's going to share the taxes tips with us. So Karen, welcome to the show. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, we're glad. And before we get started with these tax tips, I just want to disclaim, that Karen is not a tax professional. The information that she's going to be providing to you all tonight has come from her research that she's done on the Internet as well as the IRS website, also from working from a CPA for about 5 years and personal experience of doing her taxes for the last 36 years. Things change every year, so please do check with your own tax advisor or use a program like TurboTax to make sure you're aware of any changes that may have occurred for the upcoming tax season. But I think the tips that she's going to share is really going to help a lot of you tonight kind of get a handle on where to even start. So, Karen, we're going to start with the first question, which is, Avon representatives, we're considered independent contractors, not employees, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so can you tell me what the difference or advantages that are between being an independent contractor and being an employee?
The IRS, it's kind of a complicated question from the IRS, but basically an employee receives a paycheck where the employer deducts withholding, Social Security, and Medicare taxes, and then at the end of the year, that employee gets a W-2 from that employer. However, as an independent contractor, we're self-employed, and we're responsible for calculating and reporting our income to the IRS. And there's no withholding or Social Security or Medicare taxes taken out of it. And whoever, for example, us in the Avon businesses, Avon will give us a 1099. And if you receive 1099s or W-2s, you do need to report or do a tax return because the IRS will receive a copy of those forms, so they'll know you have that income.
So you would say that not every representative is going to receive a 1099 then?
No. In fact, if you'll go to youravon.com and under the My Account tab, look for, in the left-hand column, if you look for tax information, there's a form there. It's called right now it's called 2013 Tax Flyer Questions and Answers. And on the back of that, there's instructions and information on the taxes. And basically, Avon is only required to supply our name, address, Social Security number to the IRS for representatives who sell or purchase $5,000 worth of products or merchandise for resale in a single year. But they don't have to supply a specific dollar amount unless the IRS requests it, and they don't report our earnings because we're the ones that have to determine what our earnings actually are. And that is not listed on a 1099. But what will be on a 1099 are like the prizes, like the car, if whoever won that car, whoever wins any trips or any of our awards that we win, and also the leadership and recruiting bonuses. When those values equal $600 or more, then that is what's put on a 1099.
Okay. And as far as demos and sales tools and stuff, that doesn't include, because there's something about $5,000 when you said that if they purchase $5,000 or more. So that does not include demos or sales tools?
Exactly. And when they talk about that $5,000 for resale, it's going to be about approximately $8,500 of customer sales at the brochure prices. So depending on what your earnings level is where that $5,000 will come in.
Okay, so if Avon doesn't report our income to the IRS, of course I know that we can use, CPAs or tax professionals or these if they're not reporting it, though, what would you suggest the best way for us to do it other than, just filing the form?
Okay, you're going to do your regular 1040, but then in addition, you're going to use what's called a Schedule C. And most reps their income is, or their expenses are going to exceed their income for the first few years of your business. But as it grows, you'll eventually have a profit, and then you'll have to show that on your 1040 form. But that's why you need to keep track of all the expenses that you use during the year so that you can reduce that income. And I'll upload a blank Schedule C form to the Karen's Cafe so people can print that out and look at what's on there. Basically, there's 5 sections to the Schedule C. It's the first one is gross profit, which is going to be your customers' payments to you, less your returns, less what you paid for Avon. And then the next section is expenses, and that's going to be all the expenses you use in your business, and we'll go over some of those in a minute. Cost of goods sold is going to be your beginning and ending inventory, payments to anyone that helps you in your business, and then other expenses. And that's kind of a real detailed thing. I'll post some websites to the IRS where you can kind of look at that a little more in depth. The next section will be about your vehicle. You'll keep track of your miles for business versus personal. And right now that business mileage is 56.5 cents per mile. And then you'll have other expenses in the next section, which will be like business management courses, software purchases, classes or seminars, books and publications. Like when you buy the View from the Top book, you can deduct that.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. And, I think, all these little things add up at the end of the year. I know I save every receipt that I possibly can think of throughout the year if I'm buying something off of eBay or Amazon that's helping me move forward in my business, if it's an e-book or, like you said, the View from the Top or CDs or whatever it is. And when you buy labels off of eBay, those are all things that you should definitely save. And I think it's better to have than not to have it. at the end of the year to make sure you're keeping good receipts. So that's great.
Well, and that's just it. It's better to have it and not need it than to have it or to not have it and then need it. So just keep everything, and you can always talk to your tax advisor to find out for sure if it's a deductible expense or not.
Absolutely. And you can use that form, again, like she was saying, on your Avon, the tax form. I think it's got on the back where you can just kind of track everything. Or Excel spreadsheets work. Or I think even, like for me, I got a Neat Desk, and that has been a lifesaver so far in starting 2014. If you can afford to get one of those or put some of your money aside to buy one, I'm telling you, I have the small, just one Neat Receipts, and it's amazing so far. I'm loving it. So anybody that's needing something like that or thinking about getting one of those, I think they're fabulous. Okay, back to our question. So do we have to, Karen, would you say we have to earn a certain amount of money? I get this question a lot in order to file a return, because some people that might have just started, in, let's say, September, October, right. What would you say to them? How much do they really need to have in order to have to file?
Well, according to the IRS, it's $400 a year. So if after all of your deductions and your income, after all of your deductions are subtracted from your income, if your income is $400 or more, then you should have to file a tax return. But again, check with your tax advisor to be sure, because some of these IRS rules are really hard to decipher. They're about as clear as mud.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons we're having this call, is because there's so many unanswered questions, and since you have that experience, I know that it can help maybe answer some of the more basic ones. But when we start getting in the nitty-gritty, if you've got a very large Avon business, you really probably should see a CPA. Well, let's get on to how we prepare during the year, like we were just talking about, making sure we have our receipts and everything. Would you say it's best what's the best advice for somebody that's just starting an Avon business, or even a seasoned rep, to prepare and organize the tax information? Because, like I said, I'm using the Neat Desk. You can use a file cabinet. What other kind of things can people do to make sure they're staying really organized throughout the year?
Well, you want to do your research, and that's how, any of us are going to learn about anything. So if you'll go to the IRS website and read up on small businesses and what you can and cannot deduct, there's a lot more to know than we can cover here tonight in just 30 minutes. I'll post a few links on Karen's Cafe after the show, and they can go and look through those and find more detailed answers to some of the questions. You just need to keep good records and document those records appropriately, so that the IRS, if they ever do audit you, you could say, well, this is why I took it, this is what I used it for, yada, yada. Another thing that I try to tell all my new reps is to open a separate banking account for your business and use that for everything business related. It'll make it a whole lot easier to check your income and your expenses, and don't use your cash because it's just too hard to track. It's easier to tell if you're making money or not if you have your own separate account, because what comes in and what comes out is right there. It's not mixed with your personal. And then you'll also have a debit card that you can use to pay for your Avon bill. And then, again, that just automatically tracks it. And then when you purchase products for yourself, either pay for that with your earnings, which is a good thing because you've made enough money to buy something for yourself, but know that it's going to make it look like you've made less money, so you're going to think, I'm not making any money. You are. You've just chosen to use it for yourself. Mm-hmm. Or actually pay yourself from your personal checking account. Write yourself a check. But don't pay the cost of the products. Don't pay the brochure price. Pay only what you paid Avon for it. Take your discount from it and then pay that. And don't pay your business supplies from your personal account. You want those to stay within your business checking account so that you can tell where you're at in that aspect.
Excellent. And, if Avon doesn't tell the IRS about how much money we've made, then what's the major benefit of claiming our Avon businesses on their tax return? Of course, I know deductions. That's, having a small business, deductions are great, so it's a great write-off. So what else would you say about, having a small business with the deductions?
Well, small businesses generate over 70% of the job growth in North America. And Congress passes good tax laws for those small businesses. So that means we have great tax savings available to us if we'll just use them. So, for instance, a small business, you get to take the deductions first before you pay the tax on $1, whereas as an employee, you have to pay taxes on every single dollar. So you have a big savings there.
Yeah, that's a big plus for sure. And would you be able to give us maybe an example of some different scenarios between maybe an employee tax situation and a business owner tax situation?
Well, let's say a family needs 2 incomes to survive. Are they really surviving with those 2 incomes? Not really, because especially if you have kids, at the end of the year, you're not going to show much difference in your financial situation because with that extra income comes extra expenses like more gas to and from work. You're going to be buying lunches. You're probably going to go out to dinner more. If you have kids, you're going to have the child care, which is a big expense for working moms, especially if you have more than one, and then additional clothing. But if you have your own business like ours, most of those items would be a deductible expense. So, for example, with my Avon business and the fact that my husband works from home since his company doesn't have an office in our town, we get to deduct most of those kinds of items where you can't do that as an individual. So because we do that, we've been able to have a large refund every year. I call it our yearly tax savings account. And so to me, that's my contribution to our family's financial situation, because at the end of the year, well, actually at the beginning of the year, I get this large payment. I can go pay off a bill or whatever. But when I lost my track, when my income starts exceeding my expenses, which when, my business gets larger, or maybe a business like yours that your income is probably a lot larger than your expenses, if you have good record-keeping and documentation, it will be reduced as much as you can get it by keeping track of all your expenses. But at some point, we'll probably have to make quarterly estimated tax payments through the year so I don't have to come up with those funds all at once on April 15th.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of senior friends of mine, and that's what they do is the quarterly, and I think I probably should have set that up this year, and I didn't. So we will be seeing a CPA this year to help us figure this all out and go forward,
right.
Because once you do start making more in your residual and then the bonus money and all that, it adds up quickly, and then you start seeing the bigger profits. So, and
right.
Speaking of quarterly estimated tax payment, can you elaborate a little bit more on what that is? Like for the people that might not understand what we're saying.
An estimated tax, it's a method used to pay tax on income that's not subject to withholding, which would be as an independent contractor. So this would include the self-employment earnings less our deductions, and then those prizes and awards that we all love to get. You generally don't have to make payments unless you expect to owe taxes. Now, this isn't your income. It's taxes that you will owe Avon that's over $1,000. And there's a worksheet. The IRS has a worksheet that you can fill out, and it'll help you decide how much that might be. You basically will go from your prior year and then fill it out, and then it'll kind of estimate what it should be. And if it comes out to where you've paid in more than what you need to, you'll get that refunded back at the end of the year.
Right, and that's always, better to pay more than to owe, at the end, so that's good.
Exactly.
What kind of documentation would you say is helpful to keep track of our deductions? Because you and I talked before this, and you gave me a great analogy of something that you learned, so I'm looking forward to you sharing that with us.
Well, the burden of proof is on us. So we have to make sure we document every single thing. So the better the documentation, the less likely we'll have issues if we are ever audited. I've only been audited once in 36 years, but it was my fault, and it had nothing to do with my business. It was a personal W-2 I forgot to include on a small job I had. But if you'll remember the 4 W's and an H to document everything, which is who you were with, what you talked about, where you were, when you met, or the date that you met, and how much it cost. Then there's some great spreadsheets that are in the file section of Karen's Cafe that I'll bump up to the top so that people can download those to use. There's 2 of those, and then there's also, we talked about it earlier, on youravon.com, that tax flyer and Q&A. That's a real simple form for somebody who's just starting in the business and just wants to keep a simple record. I would suggest that one. The other 2 are more complicated spreadsheets, but they're really good to use for your campaigns every campaign. So you just kind of pick one that works best for you, but use it. Don't wait till the last day of the tax season to start doing a spreadsheet, because trust me, it's no fun.
And I love the 4 W's: who, what, where, when, and the 1 H, how much did it cost? So remember that, everybody. That should help you. Write that down: who, what, where, when, and how much did it cost? Now, what documents? We talked about the list, so if everybody has their notepads out, we're going to go through this list just to kind of give you some brief. And like you said, after the show, if you're not on Karen's Cafe, we'll send you over to the Facebook event page, and then Karen can put her group information there as well so you can get to some of these documents she's talking about. But what documents should we gather up to be able to fill out the spreadsheets? So when you were talking about the listing.
Right. Well, when I was doing my taxes last year, I thought I've got to come up with something. So I wrote these down as I did them. We don't have these anymore, but I used the collection envelopes that Avon used to sell us. But you can use a summary sheet or whatever you use to keep track of your deliveries and your payments from your customers. Deposit slips showing the customers' deposits and your leadership and bonus checks. Also have your check stubs from those available. And then your Avon invoice. On the bottom of the invoice, I separate out what was personal for myself or gifts to family and friends, what I gave as free gifts to customers or my team, and then demos. I mark I separate my demos. Anything that you buy out of the demo book can be used as an expense. If you buy it out of the brochure, yes, you are demoing it, but it's going to be iffy whether the IRS is going to use it. But I would mark that also. And then I also separate out my supplies, such as bags, samples, brochure covers, and things like that. My sales tools, which are the kits and brochures, and then, of course, your one simple fee. Also gather up copies of your personal invoice. In my account, I have my business invoice, which is what is already automatically set up for me in youravon.com, and then I set up a personal account for me also. I also set up one for my Santa's workshop that I do every year and any vendor event. So I print out those invoices. Utility bills for your house, your gas, your electric, because you can deduct a portion of those. Your home security, if you have one. If you have a house phone, you cannot take your house phone as a deduction unless you have 2 lines, and then you can take the second one. Your internet bill, your cell phone bill. Also print out every campaign your earnings statement if you're in leadership, because you can't go back and print them later. So you have to print those out every single campaign. Keep track of your mileage for that campaign. Use the 4 H's or the 4 W's and an H, and you have to log it. And I use an app called TripLog GPS Mileage Tracker that's on my Android phone. I'm sure iPhones have one similar. And I can email reports to myself each campaign. Gather up all your receipts, and again, use the 4 W's and an H. And then I'll make a copy of those. I'll try to put as many as I can on one sheet, because they'll keep longer and you can read them longer. I have some receipts that I can barely read, and they're only a month old. And then some other steps you want to do is you want to adjust your inventory for that campaign, enter it all on the spreadsheets, and then file it away. Another tip I'll give you is if you'll keep an envelope or even a Ziploc baggie in your purse to keep receipts in that you collect during the day when you're out and about, then mark on each one the 4 W's and an H, and then when you get home, just stick that in your little box or filing system so they'll be ready for you when you need them during tax time.
That's great. And, gosh, there's told you that the show would go really quick. We have about 6 minutes left. What we're going to do is we have a great long list. If we could just kind of briefly, she's just going to give you the top things on this, and then we're going to post it, like I said, so you guys can pull this. But give us, if you could, other deductions that we can take on the expenses that we talked about.
Okay. Some of the big ones and the ones that you really need to do some major documenting on, which the 4 W's and the H are going to be your meals and entertainment, your mileage, travel, any team meeting, party expenses, and associated entertainment. A short list of deductions, and this is actually long. It's not really short, but for us, your startup expenses, the $10 you paid to start, but you can only take that in the year that you paid it. Office expenses like paper, ink, planners, notebooks, your team expenses, drinks, planning materials, binders, office equipment like desks, computers, organizing expenses or supplies. Then other business such as travel, again, use the 4 W's and an H on that. Postage, mailing your brochures like with campaign mailer, vendor shows, fees, advertising, printed materials such as flyers and business cards, your tax accountant, and your program. So if you use TurboTax or Quicken, you can use those. Bank fees, inventory storage, discounts to helpers, subscriptions to magazines, business insurance, education expenses. If you take classes or seminars, you can deduct that. Donations, your gas mileage, that you have to keep a log of your gas mileage with a start and stop odometer reading, plus use the 4 W's and an H. Food and entertainment, the same thing. You use the 4 W's and an H. You can deduct 50% of your meal and 50% of a friend's meal if it's a potential client, which is somebody that you have talked business with during that lunch. And the IRS actually encourages entertainment because it's proving that you're promoting your business in pursuit of profit. Associated entertainment and fun is a new one on me. I'm not real positive if this is true or not, but the guy was talking about if we do anything fun, golf, movies, or whatever, that we can deduct 50% of our cost and our friend's cost as long as you talk business within 24 hours of having that fun, and that's supposedly per the IRS code. Again, use the 4 W's and an H. You got your home office deductions. You'll figure out a percentage of your house and use that percentage for your electricity, security, interest, and taxes of your mortgage. But you have to meet 3 tests. You have to use that space exclusively for business. And for burden of proof, you might take a picture of that area. Use it 45 minutes a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And it must be your principal place of business, so you have no other place to do admin work. And then it's not a deduction, but I also keep a copy of my customers' invoices just in case I'm questioned as to the income that I received. So that's basically a quick list of what deductions we can take.
Wow, and we have a lot of other questions that we could have covered tonight. Karen, would you do me a favor and would you let everybody know in our Facebook event page we have the top five tips of summary, basically, of what you would tell everybody to do come tax time April 15th. You have a brief overview here, but I'd like if you could post that there. The show's about to close us off here, but I want to thank you so much again for agreeing to be on. All this information is so wonderful. Again, everybody that's listening in, please head over to the Facebook event page. And if you are not friends with Karen, do you mind sharing your actual Facebook for Friends with Crest? Are you comfortable with that, or even your
yeah, that's.
Or you want to post
fine.
it in the event area so they can be able to get on your Karen's Cafe?
Okay, but if they're wanting on the Karen's Cafe, they've got to be an Avon rep. So they've got to show something on there that proves to me that they're an Avon rep.
Absolutely.
But I
so
can
if you'd like,
my personal page.
Okay, can they search your Karen's Cafe to find you, or do they need to be your friend to find it?
I think they can search it. I think they can find it.
Okay, so look for Karen's Cafe if you're not a part of it. And, again, that's her rules, that you've got to be an Avon rep, you've got to have something on your page, and you'll be able to access a lot of her great documents that she has there. Well, Karen, thank you so much again for sharing and being on. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. And, again, we look forward to seeing you over at our Facebook event to ask questions and let us know what you thought of tonight's show. Thanks so much again, Karen, for being on.
Thanks again for having me.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Avon WIIFY Right Now Radio with your host, Lisa Monison. Stay tuned for